Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University. I'm going to be trying to talk about the Spider-Man deal and why mom and dad just can't get along. Look, I am not trying to be this. I know there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are looking at this for the first time, seeing me for the first time, and you're like, this guy's not very. No, I'm not very professional. It's not what I do. This is not what I usually do. I just get a lot of. I usually just review comic books, and I'd like to stick to reviewing comic books. But I do happen to know a little bit about what's going on here, and I'm going to just talk about it a little bit because I got a bunch of people asking me to clarify things or at least give my opinion on it. My opinion is yeah, probably give it towards the end of this, but at the end of the day, like maybe. But at the end of the day, this is really just a big corporate thing, and it's annoying. And as a guy who used to work in smaller businesses, not necessarily a corporation, yeah, dude, just doing the marketing for these guys is mind racking. You get gray hairs and turn stupid. Anyway, let's get talking about this stuff a little bit. All right, here we go. This all happened because this is the 21st of August 2019. On the 20th of August 2019, yesterday, last night more specifically, Deadline.com put out a thing by the reporter Mike Fleming Jr. And I'm going to try and have links to everything that I can below. Basically, he put out this article talking about how, oh, the deal is closed. Spider-Man is not going to be in the MCU anymore. Rah, 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 and yeah. And there was a huge spin on it. I'm going to try and explain to you why that spin was put on it. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the original deal was all about in the first place. Okay, so the original Marvel deal for Spider-Man was with Sony that there would be 5 movies made. 5. Only 5. Those 5 movies they've already been made and released. We've seen them. Captain America, Civil War, Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. Yeah. The 2 that were labeled Spider-Man were for Sony. The other one, Captain America and the 2 Avengers, those 3 were made for Disney. Disney Disney made all 5 movies, put the production into it, put the money into all of them. They did everything, 100% of everything. And Sony just had to sit back and say, yes, we are licensing out this character, which we own the movie rights to you. That's what we're doing. Okay. And Marvel said they made this deal, this sweetheart deal for Sony. We will make everything. And we will keep the profits, although we're spending the money for all these, we will keep the profits for those 3 movies. But the 2 labeled Spider-Man, Homecoming and Far From Home, you get to keep the profits for those. Or at the very least, 95% of the profits. We just want 5% of the profits. Now, that's the deal. That's the only thing there is to do with the deal. But there's still more to that contract. Sony drew up that contract, but they did a not a separate contract, but in that contract with Tom Holland, the actor who actually played Spider-Man, and director Tom Watts, along with a couple of the writers. They were actually in a deal for 6 movies. That's right. They were in a deal for 6 movies. What about that extra movie? Well, it's only with Sony that deal was made. Therefore, those guys are all signed up to do 1 movie with Sony, not involving the MCU, not involving Disney at all. So understand that. That's going to be really important. And of course, we're going to cycle back to this in a hot minute. Well, not a hot minute, in a little while. Anyway, I don't want to keep this too long. Basically, this all stems from that article. And look, it's got to be understood exactly who Mike Fleming Jr. actually is. He's a reporter. He's been with Deadline for a while now. And basically, he's got insider information. He gets to talk to these guys at Sony, specifically Amy Pascal for the longest time. And now that Amy Pascal is not quite in the position of power that he was in before, he's trying to butter up. This part is my opinion. The opinion part is that he's also trying to butter up to Tom Rothman, who is now in Amy Pascal's former position in Sony. Tom Rothman used to be CEO and co-chair of Fox for the longest time, Fox Motion Pictures for a really long time. That includes TriStar, Columbia Pictures, all this good stuff that they got going on out there. Anyway, this is this movie rights thing, okay? Sony does own the rights to the films for Spider-Man, not the comic book appearances, not the cartoon appearances, not anything else. Only the movies. So when Disney or Disney XM or whatever the heck they're called puts out their Spider-Man cartoons, Sony has absolutely nothing to do with that whatsoever. The license is only for Spider-Man in the cinematic universe. Yes, that applies to motion picture animations. That's all it applies to. Yes, if it goes to DVD or Blu-ray or ultraviolet or whatever else is in the future, that all is specifically, those profits are going to go to these guys, to Sony. Toy rights do not belong to Sony. So whenever these toys are made, that's Marvel that's putting out the license for these toys. So the license deal comes from Marvel. Do they get a cut? I don't know the specifics of those license deals. Neither does Sony. So, and especially neither does Mike Fleming. So that's that. But the way that works, go and look up movies, or excuse me, Netflix shows like The Toys That Made Us to understand how that works. There's a licensing fee. So they get paid for the license fee from the toy manufacturers, and then they also put out they get a certain cut of the profits over a certain amount, whatever, however that deal is worked. So all the different toy deals that Marvel's got, that's somebody else making the toys, they're sitting back and collecting on a lot of those things. So the toys get made by the people who make them when they think that they can actually make some money off of them. And that's really that. That's why sometimes they make good ideas, sometimes they make bad ideas. Do you think that Marvel in and of itself would have done a Build-A-Figure piece with Molten Man? Really? Really? No. So no. Not on purpose, because they know that they're not going to be making a whole lot of money off of that set. Anyway, bang, there you go. All of this happened, of course, because of the departure with it. Marvel had to sell a lot of their stuff after they went bankrupt in, 1996, something like that. There was the downfall of the comics industry. Marvel and DC both had something to do with that. It was mostly Marvel that had something to do with that. They're still doing a lot of those practices today, overselling variant covers and multiple covers and things like that, as opposed to just making new content and whatnot. But they're getting better. They're getting better. Marvel right now, I believe, is for the most part outselling DC, but whether you care about them or not, the trick is Marvel had to sell their stuff back in 1996. That's when they started trying to sell their stuff. Sony came along and said, we want Spider-Man. They said, listen, we'll give you a deal for just a little bit more money. You can have all of our characters, or at least 25 of the really big ones. That includes Captain America, Iron Man, everybody that you see in the MCU, Thor, right? All of them, including Wolverine and all that stuff. And they went back, they checked, they came back, and they said something to the effect of, yeah, that's crap, we don't want it. You can find that stuff on the internet. I'll try and put links to all that stuff below in the description box. Fox came along and they said, well, we want the X-Men universe. And they said, hey, can you also take the Fantastic Four? I said, yeah, we'll take the Fantastic Four too for a little bit extra money. Sure, why not? We just really want Wolverine and the Thing, because those guys are really profitable. I bet you that Human Torch guy will be pretty profitable too. And they clearly didn't know what they had in Cyclops. Otherwise, money. New Line Cinema, I think it was, came along and they took Blade and Daredevil and a bunch of guys. They had a bunch of these characters. That's why the Nicolas Cage, Ghost Rider movies were made. All of these were made by somebody other than Marvel. Marvel didn't make movies. It was everybody else. And those licenses went out. And they put themselves into a really messed up situation by giving those movies out, because the movies never really made anybody money. They got money off of the licensing more than they did off of the profitability of the films. And those films were never really handled right. There's this guy, Tom Rothman, who is in charge of the stuff with Daredevil. And one of the things with that original Daredevil movie that was made, he said, cut about 46 minutes, or if you guys know the difference between the regular Daredevil release, the theatrical release, and the director's cut, it's an entirely different movie practically, with the extra 46 minutes or so that was cut out. Why were those 46 minutes cut out when everybody said, dude, it's actually a much better movie with the longer cut, the director's cut? Why were those cut out? Tom Rothman, who was not the director, he was the CEO at the time of, or one of the people in charge, the CEO of Fox, the motion picture department. He said, hey man, if you make the movie shorter, you can fit more screenings per day, and therefore per week, and therefore per month in the movie theaters. Yeah, but if people aren't going back to see the movie, then who cares? And he always thought that he could do the job better than everybody else, so why not? Anyway, we're going to get a whole lot more to Tom Rothman in a bit, but for now, this has a lot to do with the fact that the rights of these movies went back to Marvel eventually. That was a big deal. This was only, 8 years ago or so? I think it was even less than that. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago that the rights to those movies finally went back to Marvel, and it was a huge, beautiful deal. Awesome. We're happy about that, right? We got the Netflix version of Daredevil because Marvel just licensed them out over there. Anyway, that's what they do. They just took a lot more control over it, and it wound up biting them in the butt because Netflix says we're canceling you because we don't want this kind of control over us. So there's the pluses, there's the minuses, the pros, the cons, positives and negatives. Let's get into a little bit with this article, okay? Actually, more specifically, let's get into the build-up to the article. We got to talk about who Mike Fleming actually is. All right, so we're going to take a look around. We're going to see some of these crazy things up here about this guy. Some of these things were released that otherwise probably wouldn't have been released. There is a letter that an email that Mike Fleming sent to Amy Pascal. She's the girl who did that thing with Kevin Feige where she says, oh yeah, Spider-Man is definitely going to be a part, and Venom, the Venomverse, that's definitely going to be a part of the MCU. Yeah, and that's when Kevin Feige turned and looked at her in the interview, was like, I'm not the type to say anything out loud, so I'm just going to give you an incredulous look and have a conversation with you later in hushed whispers after this is over, and she's going to placate me, and I'm going to go back, and she's going to have to backpedal lately. So on the public scene, she goes, yes, Venom will be part of the MCU, and then privately she does the retraction, just like newspapers and TV news all the time. There's a little tiny redaction talking about, oh, by the way, no, he's not actually going to be a part. I didn't mean it like that. Basically, I lied to you. That's what she's saying. So that's who Amy Pascal is. Anyway, Amy Pascal was in charge of all the stuff. And when when Sony got hacked in a major way, a lot of the stuff, including this quick letter that Fleming sent to Pascal, this got leaked also, and it got made public. I'm not hacking anybody to find this stuff. This stuff is out there publicly. You can find this stuff. Anyway, Mike Fleming here. I'm writing a piece on the shifting producers. I'm writing a piece on the shifting producers and co-financiers around town, and paying attention to Sony's courtship of Robinov and securing of Slate funding from Blue Anchor. Yeah, blah 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 blah. The meat of this is it's a basic piece, but didn't want you to be blindsided. And if you want to speak about, the background of this, I would welcome it. Hope you are well, Mike Fleming. Cute. It's also good to know that he uses AOL back in 2013. That's when this email went out. So, yeah, this guy, he's got a close personal relationship with Amy Pascal. Why is that important? Because when he does this article, he will say, sources. It's somebody inside of Sony. But at the end of it, he'll say, neither Marvel, nor Disney, nor Kevin Feige, nor Sony responded to inquiries. But he talked to Sony, didn't he? Well, technically, he talks to Amy Pascal. And sometimes he'll talk to some of the other people in there also, but it's mostly Amy Pascal he does this with. Amy Pascal has called him a friend. That got released in the hacks also. Oh, he's a friend. You can trust him. Oh, he's covering the Toronto Film Festival, and he's going to be talking about this one Denzel Washington movie, which is like all the other Denzel Washington movies that have come out in the past 10 years. It's just him with a gun, and he's going to make people do things. To me, they've all been the same movies. If you like them, cool. No disrespect to you. But this guy telling them, I love the movie. Oh my God, I want to know so much more about this character, the backstory, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, I've seen that stuff before. Basically, it's just him he's being a kiss ass, all right? He's a bootlicker. That's basically what he does. But by being a bootlicker, he gets to put exclusive in the front of his articles. And it looks like he's got some inside information, which he does. But he's got to maintain friendship with Amy Pascal in order to do that. So she will say in company emails, I'm going to release some information to this guy. Go ahead and feel free to talk to this guy. He's not going to twist your words, or he's not going to, say anything particularly bad or incriminating against us. He's not going to, he's going to try and do a fluff piece about everything that we do. He's going to stay friendly because he doesn't want to rock the boat. Basically, that would be like me doing comic book reviews. And since I've got certain people who like me on Facebook or follow me, or friend me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter, from the Marvel, DC, or whatever world, and or they talk to me in private DMs, and I say, oh well, I can't say anything bad about their comics. I've got to always give them glowing reviews, otherwise they'll stop talking to me. Well, then am I really being fair to my audience? Am I actually reviewing a comic book, or am I just, where do I want my audience to be? To the people, or to the one person who's writing the book, the one person who's drawing the book? You know what I'm saying? That's the big difference here. So his audience is actually to Amy Pascal and Sony as a whole, not really to us. And you could tell by the actual article that he wrote. And let's get into that actual article right now. So, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige won't produce any further Spider-Man films because of an inability by Disney and Sony Pictures, got to make it look like it's fair, by an inability of both of these entities to, work out a deal. So right away in the beginning, it looks like he's trying to be fair. But you quickly see as the article goes on that, he's talking nice about Sony. He's talking really nice about Tom Rothman. And he's talking pretty nice about Kevin Feige also. But he's doing that to downplay what Disney actually contributes, what the MCU in and of itself actually contributes. So is this a way to kind of court Kevin Feige and make it look like, hey man, I want exclusivity with you. I also, Sony also told me don't disrespect Kevin Feige because we're going to be trying to get him to come over back to working with, remember where Kevin Feige got to start was as an assistant basically to Amy Pascal, and look at what he's accomplished. I don't need to finish that sentence, do I? So, the thing just goes on. Sources, and mind you, you have to understand what sources mean in this. He's talking to Amy Pascal in this, all right? Sources say there are 2 more Spider-Man films in the work. The studio hopes to blah, 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 have John Watts and Tom Holland front and center, although Watts doesn't have a deal for the next picture and isn't a lock to return. That isn't helped by the fact that unless something dramatic happens, Feige won't be the lead creative producer of those pictures. That's cute. That's cute. And listen, Feige definitely, I'm not trying to downplay Feige, but you gotta when the guy's, pumped up like this. Kevin Feige doesn't write these stories. He doesn't write, he's not credited as a writer. Yes, he definitely co-aligns the sun and the stars to get the pictures to work with each other, to get all the MCU movies to kind of flow with each other. With each other. And he definitely goes with a couple other people and he says, this is the Marvel method, this is the MCU method to get these movies flowing and to get a certain amount of humor to, we've worked with this and this is the Marvel method, and Kevin Feige is definitely the top dog of there. Is he the only person who, like, if Kevin Feige were to disappear tomorrow and move to Mars, would the MCU fall apart? I'm sure that Sony would want you to think that. I'm sure that what's his name here? Mike Fleming would want you to think that. Maybe Kevin Feige would even want you to think that. I don't know. But one thing that's for sure is that, no. No, the sun and moon isn't going to fall apart just because. That's simply not going to happen. So, so he's really fluffed up a lot here. Mike Fleming tries to act like a cool, hip young kid here by saying there's a lot of webbing here, but it all comes down to money. Yeah, I see what you did there. Nice pun. Nobody goes for puns. It's easy to understand both sides' refusal to give ground. So, this is where he actually starts to get into the meat and potatoes here, where he tries to be fair, but doesn't. So let's look at this. Disney asked that the future Spider-Man films be a 50-50 co-financing arrangement between the studios, and there were discussions that this might extend to other films in the Spider-Man universe. Sony turned that offer down flat. Sources say that Sony, led by Tom Rothman and Tony Vinciquerra, came back with other configurations, but Disney didn't want to do that. But Sony did not want to share its biggest franchise. Sure, Disney would be putting up half of the funding, but the risk is in how much you're going to make back in profit. Disney wasn't at all interested in continuing the current terms where Marvel receives in the range of 5% of the first dollar gross, sources say. Now, this can seem on the outside like as if Marvel is actually being the reasonable one here, or Disney is being the reasonable one here, but some of the groundwork is actually laid down to make it look like, no, that's simply not the case, especially with every single thing that is said after this particular paragraph. So we talk about Marvel receiving in the range of 5% of first dollar gross. So somebody may decide to look up, and hopefully everybody decides to look up, first dollar gross. This is a term that exists within the movie, motion picture, whatever, cinematography world, where rather than looking at after profitability, see, usually what happens is a company will make a movie. There's all the expenditures that you have to make, and they always lie about how much money they had to spend on the movie, because everything else we know is profitability. And profitability starts with after you get back the money that you put into production, cost for the cast and crew, the lot, the scenery, the marketing, that's usually a big one. Everything that you put into the making of this movie, everything that you spent into the movie, what do you make back afterwards? That is called profitability, because everybody else has already been paid. It's the producers who stand to make that money afterwards. That's what producers basically do. They just put in money in movies that they think that there's going to be really profitable, because then they're going to get a huge cut of the profitability of it. If a movie bombs and makes less than what was spent, they lose all of that money. All of that money. And that sucks. What's the difference between a producer and an executive producer? Usually how much money you put into it. It's more of an honorary term. A producer is a producer. That's all they are. But an executive producer is somebody who, well, they put in a little bit extra money. Or you didn't put in any money, but you did a lot of creativity. Like, for instance, Stan Lee would be considered an executive producer. We don't want you actually doing anything in the movie. We don't want any of your opinions or anything like that, but we're going to give you executive producer title, and maybe we'll throw you $1 million so that you just, shut up. But thank you for all that you've done. Oh, by the way, if you are actually Stan Lee, well, then we'll also pay you a little bit to come on in and, make a quick cameo appearance, because it's really good for the sales. That's just what you don't see any of the other producers being brought in like that, right? But anyway, that's in general what happens here. So getting 5% off of the first dollar gross. First dollar means regardless of how much money the movie makes, from the first dollar that is made off of that movie, meaning in the movie theaters, you immediately start getting 5% of that, or in the range of. Is it actually 5%? Is it only 3%? That's actually a big deal. That's a huge deal. But that's the difference between millions of dollars, money that you and I on average will never see. Now, why does that seem so misleading? Because when you say this, it looks like, oh, even before profitability is made, they're guaranteed to get in the range of 5%. People don't remember in the range of, they remember the number, the 5%. So they're going to guarantee to get 5% off of what's made. Do you remember what I said earlier on? I said it's going to come back to this. Considering the fact that Marvel put out, or Disney put out 100% of the cost of the movie, including the marketing, getting first dollar gross is kind of misleading, isn't it? Because you still have to make profitability off of that, don't you? If you're getting, even if you're getting 20% off of first dollar gross, that's still going to be stymied by how much they paid for the movie. Make no mistake, Marvel did not get a whole lot of money off of that. the people who made money off of those those two Spider-Man movies, Homecoming and Far From Home, that was Sony. They put in zero of the cost, but they earned 95% of the earnings. Is that fair? Well, it's legal, and it was certainly done that way because Marvel was hoping that we'll give them a sweetheart deal, and then maybe they'll be willing to work with us when they see how successful the movie is. And let's face it, the most successful movie that Sony has ever made money off of is Spider-Man Far From Home. In fact, let's actually get into the money that they've actually made from their movies. We're going to get into the top 10. We're going to go to a little bit more than just the top 10 also, just so you get an idea of what's going on here. So, as of the making of this video, Spider-Man Far From Home this week has finally surpassed Skyfall, which is the 2020 James Bond movie that was Sony's previous #1 ranked movie out there. Top worldwide box office draw, domestic draw, international box office, all that good stuff. That was the main movie that made the most money for them, was Skyfall. Now it is Spider-Man Far From Home. Of course, you also have to remember that money involved zero production cost for them, zero marketing costs. So yeah, kind of unfair, but hey, whatever. Whatever. Still, this is kind of important for them. So Spider-Man Far From Home, number 2, Skyfall, number 3, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. What is that, Jumanji 3? Number 4 is Spider-Man 3. That's right, the Tobey Maguire and the one where Venom appeared and he just looks silly. The one with Sandman in it. Number 5 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 6 is another James Bond movie, Spectre. Number 7 is Venom. Number 8 is Spider-Man, the 2002 original Spider-Man movie, Tobey Maguire. Where's Spider-Man 2? Well, that's number 9. Number 10 for them was The Da Vinci Code. Now, I'm going to do number 11. Why? Because it's The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, the first one with Andrew Garfield, is number 11 for the most profitable for them, domestic, international, and worldwide, as a whole. After that, we go a little bit crazy. We got The Da Vinci Code. We go to, after The Amazing Spider-Man, number 12 is 2012. You remember that disaster film that was made? And then number 13 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah, the second one that broke everything and freaking had to be rebooted. The one that eventually led to the deal with Marvel, with Disney. Anyway, after that, you got a bunch of other ones. You got Men in Black Part 3. You got Hancock, Casino Royale, and Quantum Solace, which are 2 more James Bond movies. James Bond and Spider-Man has been the most profitable 2 movies for these guys. After that is the Tom Hanks Angels and Demons and all that stuff with the Da Vinci Code stuff. That would probably be considered number 3. Hotel Transylvania animated would be considered pretty good for them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, but I mean, they're bragging about the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse thing for them. Oh, it was a very successful, profitable film, which they're going to sit there and talk about. That's what Mike Fleming wants to talk about. That's really cute for you to say, and yes, a lot of people liked it. Did it make them a lot of money? Well, technically, it's still technically making them money. It's still in a couple theaters, still being sold in DVD actively, but there's a 2018 movie, and it's been their 28th most successful movie. You know what the 27th most successful movie for them is? Godzilla, featuring Matthew Broderick. I want you to seriously stop for a second and just think about that. The Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie, which came out in 1998, is right now more successful financially than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Let that sink in. Other movies more successful: Hotel Transylvania, Men in Black 2, Hotel Transylvania 2, Angels and Demons, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. That's an easy one. Hotel Transylvania 3. All 3 of the Hotel Transylvania cartoon movies. This one, I don't know what this is. If you know what this is, cool. I think that the majority of the audience probably won't know. My Ren Yu is bigger than this. The Smurfs movie bigger than Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, all that, like the Smurfs movie was bigger, for crying out loud. Look, my peeps, Spider-Man has been pretty popular when you look at the idea that when the original Spider-Man movie was made, there was not a whole lot of competition out there, right? Sony got to master that. Sony got to come in and just kick down the doors. Blade was cool, but people weren't expecting Blade. Nobody expected Blade. Nobody knew who Blade was. I didn't even think that Blade was Blade when I went in to go and see the movie, and I'm going there with my buddy Chris, and afterwards, like, isn't this the guy from the comic books? Because he knows that I'm the comic book guru, regardless of whether I was called Professor Bill at the time or not. And I'm just like, yeah, this is. All the names are the same, but that's not that Wesley Snipes version of Blade is not the Blade from the comic books. Holy crap! This leather jacket and shaved head thing, no afro and no, bomber jacket with the freaking wooden stakes across it. Oh my God, this is a very different Blade than what I'm used to, and this works, and it was amazing. But I didn't even realize this was going to be, I didn't look at the advertisements for it. I didn't even know this was going to be a freaking huge thing. Like, geez. Wow. That was a big deal. But nobody knew what it was at the time. The X-Men movie came along afterwards, like, oh, wow, and it's a big deal. But, X-Men 1 and 2 was actually very successful, but that wasn't for Sony. That was for Fox, ultimately. We're going to get into that in a hot minute. But first, it's got to be understood that, yeah, Into the Spider-Verse was not really that successful, is not currently that successful for them. I mean, it's going to be in the top 25 at some point, which, yay. But we're going to get more into that. Look, the fact is that Disney did all the legwork for it. They're the ones who opened up the wallet and did all this stuff, and Sony didn't have to do anything. And this was just the beginning of a sweetheart deal, and Marvel Disney's essentially just simply wanted to show them, look at how profitable you are when you're working with us. Yeah, look at how good the films are. Look at how much money you can make for it. Look at all of this stuff. Now, here's the trick about this. Marvel decided, and it's in here, but everything afterwards is trying to make you forget that stuff and to try and, trick you into thinking it's not as good as we think it is. At the end of the day, Marvel came to them with a new deal. They said, we'd like to continue working with you, but from now on, instead of people saying, oh, Marvel just wants more money. Is that really what's being asked for here? Did Marvel actually ask for more money? Because I'm pretty sure that the way it actually works is, according to even just this article, is that Marvel didn't ask for more money. What they said was, split the costs of the movies with us 50-50. And then to add to what we're doing is, we'll also take into the wing your other parts of this franchise, the Spider-Man franchise. So not just the Spider-Man movies, but you want to do this goofy silver and black thing? Well, if that's really what you want to do, whatever. Like, we'll use some of the other characters in your film, so we get to actually incorporate them into the Marvel Universe, and it'll be just like you'll still own it, you'll license it to us, we'll do all the work, but you just split half of the bill with us. And the movies that are solely yours, we'll add a couple of our MCU characters into it, just like we've always done, and you'll still make all the money from it, but you'll pay for half of the film. And then we'll work out everything else. I don't know if it's clear or not that they're going to have to co-finance the movies that Marvel is going to make. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. I don't think that's actually what's here, but if it is, well, that's a little bit silly. But the idea is that beyond the shadow of a doubt, Marvel is saying, Disney is saying, you pay for half of the movies that we're making for you. And then you can continue collecting all that money. We'll still only get that 5% to try and, take back some of the costs, but you let Spider-Man play in our universe. And if you want, we'll even extend that deal to other, like if you want to make a Rhino solo movie or something like that. Or if you also want us to handle Venom. Holy crap, guys. Think about that. Marvel doing Venom. That could, I guess, include Tom Hardy still being Venom. That's important. Marvel would do that, but they want Sony to pay for half of that from now on instead of DC has nothing to do with this. Instead of Disney having to pay for all of it, having to incur and foot all of the cost for it. That's the most important paragraph that's in this entire article. The problem is it continues. So now it goes on to talk about how, now it's easy to say that Disney has, or that Feige has enough on his plate, especially after taking control of the X-Men universe in the Fox acquisition, including the Deadpool franchise. You might as well throw in the Fantastic Four also, because that's going to be kind of important. And architecting the next phase of the blah, 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 blah. Basically, hey, Feige, you're really awesome. We're still courting you. We still want you to come over and work with us. It's the mean Disney that's being bad. You're the only one that matters here. If Feige comes over and starts working for them, the MCU characters still stay in the MCU, just so that we're clear. Disney already has all that stuff down. Will the movies be as good? Maybe they'll bring back Michael Fassbender, or maybe they'll bring in Michael Fassbender, but maybe they'll have Jon Favreau, that's what I meant to say, come in and continue doing this stuff and give him some more creative control, because hey, Peyton Reed, have him coming in, doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. He already wrote an awesome script for the Fantastic Four. We've seen it. Ryan Reynolds is on board with the MCU, baby, because hell yeah. There's going to be a lot of people saying, yeah, but they're going to make it PG-13. Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know yet. That's the thing. We need to focus on the things that we know. But definitely make your voices heard. Because the MCU, it appears, Kevin Feige, these guys, they actually pay attention to what we say. Disney, Sony usually doesn't, just like Fox didn't. Why? I'm going to tell you exactly why in a hot moment. First, next paragraph over, because this one is annoying. Essentially, this means that Sony will have to try to win a championship without Michael Jordan. After all, Feige's first... Yeah, more on Feige. His consistency has been nothing short of historic. Even George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Peter Jackson haven't seen anything or everything turn into a hit. And so maybe only James Cameron has the success record that Feige has achieved. But Feige has, like, come on, man. Like, really? This is what we're doing? Feige's amazing, but come on, my peeps, come on. Let's see here. They're actually even praising Black Panther, which is interesting because one of the concepts was to have Kraven the Hunter show up, and Kraven would actually be a pissed off Wakandan. Wouldn't that be a really cool idea? Yes, I think it would be, but we're not going to see that now if everything stays the same, which it might. It also might not. We're going to get into that. Fleming decides to give a little bit of credit to a couple of the other guys, like the Joe and Anthony Russo directed blockbuster Captain America Civil War, the film that set the 2 record-breaking Avengers film, and rebooted Spider-Man, right away back to Spider-Man again. Sony's top grossing film ever. Okay, appreciated. That's appreciated. Of course, it's top grossing because they didn't have to incur any of the costs of production, but whatever. It's just the idea. I know we want to try and make it seem like a lot of the Marvel guys, the MCU guys, want to be like, no, say good things about, Spider-Man lately because that's going to make them come back. It's not making them come back because they do understand where that money is coming from and where it's being spent. They're just really trying to negotiate a better deal. And leaking this stuff to this Fleming guy is basically just a way of them trying to show, oh, look at what's happening here. Okay. Sources at Disney's top brass for this is funny because I don't think this guy's got any sources at Disney's top brass. But whatever. I can get into that later if I remember. Sources at Disney's top brass for the past several months have sought new terms for Feige and the Marvel cross-pollination to continue as the Spider-Man relationship grew. Feige and Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman, here we go, spoke about the possibility of a wider involvement in the Sony-controlled Spider-Man universe, which contains 900 characters. What was the point of actually saying that? What was honestly the point of that? So let's get into who Tom Rothman is. Tom Rothman is an American, this is coming directly from his Wikipedia page, is an American film executive. He is chairman of Sony Motion Picture Group. I'm going to say that again because that's actually what it says here. He is chairman of Sony Motion Picture Group. In that role, Rothman oversees the studio's motion picture production, onomatopoeias, Peter Piper, Pepper, yeah, there we go, and distribution activities worldwide, including Columbia Pictures. Tom Rothman joined Sony Pictures in late 2013 as chairman of TriStar Pictures. Prior to that, he was chief executive officer of Fox Filmed Entertainment with Jim Giannopoulos. Until his resignation, he was chased out on September 14th, 2012, effective January 1st. Rothman began at Fox in 1994 as the founder and president of Fox Searchlight Pictures and served with the company for 18 years. Under his leadership, this is important, under his leadership, Fox had the best profit margins of any film studio. This is, of course, also just a little bit, but during Rothman's tenure, Fox films were nominated for 150 Oscars and won 3 Best Picture awards. The company also earned over $30 billion in the box office and made two of the 3 highest-grossing films of all time, Titanic and Avatar. Rothman also hosted Fox Legacy, television, blah, 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 whatever, who cares. Tom Rothman. Let me tell you who Tom Rothman actually is, because Wikipedia can be made by Tom Rothman if he wants to. Tom Rothman, most big names, they don't make it into, like most of us will never know about who some of these big guys are. A lot of people know who Avi Arad is because of people like me and other people who know the history of Marvel and what eventually became Marvel Studios and all this other crazy stuff. Like, we know who Avi Arad is, and we know that he's basically scum. He is scum. We know who Amy Pascal is, mostly because of the leaks and all this crazy hoopla and whatnot. We know who, for crying out loud, what the heck is her name in charge of the Star Wars universe? A lot of people hate her also, whatever. But here, a lot of us know who Tom Rothman is, and we're really going to start to learn who he is soon, I think. Tom Rothman, co-chairman of CEO at Fox for 2001 through 2012. Co-chairman and CEO. Yeah. Here's some of the things that he's actually done under his tenure at Fox. He's the guy who canceled Firefly. I know a lot of you guys already despise this man. Single-handedly, he was responsible for canceling Firefly because he doesn't believe in sci-fi space movies. He doesn't believe that anything done in space is going to be effective. Oh, hold for that. I've got a whole lot more. So he canceled Firefly. He demanded more CGI for Daredevil and reduced the running time, as I already explained earlier. He's the one who demanded that Galactus in the Fantastic Four Return of the Silver Surfer, that Galactus be the giant purple fart cloud. He's the one who demanded that he be a giant cloud to make it ambiguous. Yeah, that was him. He refused to allow the Sentinels appear in the X-Men movies because he believed that giant robots are stupid and no one will ever believe giant robots are a credible threat. So much so that even a guy who makes big bots go boom, Michael Bay, made some of the most successful movies in the world called Transformers. Movies that we all complained about and yet we still went to see because, god damn it, giant robots sell like crazy. Anyway, he's the reason why we couldn't have Sentinels in the X-Men movies. Oh, you might say, but they did eventually appear. Yeah, after he left. Let's talk a little bit more about the fact that he's the reason why Bryan Singer left the X-Men franchise after the first 2 successful X-Men movies, which were X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. They were successful, and then he Tom Rothman dangled Bryan Singer's contract in front of him, wouldn't renew it, just kept on messing with him. And finally Singer said, you know what? Screw this. I'm going over. DC asked me to go over and make the Tom Roth, the Roth, whatever that guy's name is, the guy who eventually did Superman and Superman Returns, right? Went over and did that, and it was a fail of a movie. It is what it is, whatever, okay? He failed in that movie. There's no doubt about that. But he was actually blamed for him not coming back to do X3. But it was actually Rothman, Tom Rothman, who refused to bring him back to do X3. So he went and did X3 on his own. Tom Rothman micromanaged the hell out of X3, and that's why we got an off-camera death for Cyclops. That's why we got a couple of really cool scenes, but for the most part, Juggernaut didn't look like Juggernaut. None of the stuff was according to comic book accuracy because he was trying to micromanage it and get it to be done as cheap as possible and get a couple of big figures like Kelsey Grammer as Beast was actually a really great idea. There were a couple of really great ideas in here, but unfortunately the movie, although it was successful on the backs of the previous two movies because we expected it was going to be as good. And it just wasn't. And we were shocked that an X-Men movie could be bad. Most of us, myself included. I only saw it once in the theaters, but yeah, I got it on DVD also, part of a 3-pack actually. Did a spotlight on story for the comic book that came with it in the tin. But I mean, like, none of us knew what to make out of it. Like, why is this so bad? How could they get the Dark Phoenix saga wrong? It took some time for us to acknowledge why it was so bad. But anyway, that was all him. Hey, it was Tom Rothman who was pretty much completely responsible for the Fan 4-Stick movie. Didn't want it to be in space a whole lot. Also hired Josh Trank. He approved of the hiring of Josh Trank for doing this. Micromanaged it to, look, Josh Trank had his own problems, but Tom Rothman didn't exactly make it easier by micromanaging things. Actually wound up booting him and cutting all but 1/3 of the movie, and then brought in just that's the reason why if you ever watched Fan 4-Stick, it was so choppy and so messed up. It just seemed it's like, oh, this is actually a pretty good movie. I don't know what people are talking about. And all of a sudden, oh my God, what am I watching here? It just became 3 completely different movies, and it sucked for all intents and purposes. That was Tom Rothman and his micromanaging. He's caused a lot of people to not want to come back. That includes actors, that includes producers, that includes directors, that includes writers, that includes everybody involved in making movies. They didn't want to come back to 20th Century Fox. But make no mistake, he was really good at making sure that for the stockholders, that's the only people he cared about, they never had a quarterly loss. In his entire tenure while he was in charge, they never once had a quarterly loss. Did he make them money? Technically, but he could have made more. At the same time, understand what it means to be working for these guys, these shareholders. If you do 10 years, let's make it 20. If you do 20 years and you make profitability for them 19 out of those 20 years, the only one they're really going to focus and keep on bringing up is that 1 year that you brought them to a loss. That's all they're ever going to focus on because they don't like risk. Risk could mean a whole lot of money. It could mean losing their money. Shareholders despise risk. They would rather stick with the average, oh no, this is good. They don't want to go with, what we would look at in our 401ks as an aggressive, risk factor. You stand to make the most money. You also stand to lose the most money. They don't want that. They want to put in and they want that guaranteed return. That's all they're looking for on average. So he was great for them. For everybody else, though, that was short-term, mind you. Long-term, when people stopped wanting to come back and do movies for Fox, suddenly Fox didn't turn out so well. So they fired Tom Rothman. But the problem stuck so badly that they just said that Fox decided we're just going to keep our news and our sports center and we're just going to send our movie stuff. We're going to put that up for sale. And that's when the big bidding war between Comcast and Disney came up. And lo and behold, the rights to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men reverted back to, well, not reverted to, but were actually purchased by the Disney Corporation. Yeah. that was mostly Tom Rothman. There was a bunch of factors involved, absolutely, but Tom Rothman as the head. Look, I got to go with a Scaramucci quote here: "The fish rots from the head down." Everybody says the crap rolls downhill. Yes, it certainly does roll downhill. So where does that mean it originates from? I don't care about where the smell is and where the blame goes. Where does it originate from? We have to really think about these idioms that we have and examine them. This came from Tom Rothman. Some of the other things that Tom Rothman has contributed to. Independence Day. A great movie that he didn't have anything to do with. But when it was time to renew it, he didn't like it because he doesn't like space stuff. And he kept on screwing them and screwing them and screwing them. And by the time that it was finally made, yeah. Yeah, you saw it. Alien versus Predator. Two extremely successful comic book companies that were all like, yes! This will make so much money. The Alien movies were pretty good. The Predator movies, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, wow. But when they combined Alien versus Predator, in the comic book, anybody who read the comic book, you know, that happened in space. Why did he ground that? One, he hates space stuff. He doesn't think it sells. Two, he's just trying to save money. Take some of the risk out of this stuff, guys. Take some of the risk out of this stuff. We got to lower the budget a whole lot, okay? And we're going to come in here, we're going to micromanage this stuff, but you're still going to get the blame for everything that goes bad, all right? X-Men Origins Wolverine. He micromanaged this probably more than anything else. Yeah, when Ryan Reynolds came in, great pick, right? When he came in, he said, we're going to have to kind of ground this a little bit. Hey, listen, instead of doing this expensive costume for Deadpool, how about we instead just put some tape on him? We'll put this mask thing over top of his mouth. And, you know, it worked really good in The Matrix. And, yeah, we'll make the merc with a mouth the guy without a mouth. He wasn't called the merc with the Cyclops eye beams, the merc with the teleportation ability, the merc with the tattoo things across his bare chest. No, he was the merc with a mouth. He wasn't the merc with the Baraka claws either. Like, dude, this was such a fail move. And he also, like, he actually came in, okay? He actually came in. He director for that movie was Gavin Hood, okay? The director was Gavin Hood. This is the end of my notes. Director Gavin Hood wanted a dark and gritty movie. And Tom Rothman came in and micromanaged so much that he's like, no, I want it to be brighter. At one point when Gavin Hood had a couple days off because the movie was going to go on doing whatever it was going to do. Like, none of the actors were going to be there. He didn't have to actually direct at this point. Everybody had a brief, like, I think it was a 3-day vacation. Rothman came in and looked around. He's like, God, it's so dark. And he ordered for the entire set to be repainted a brighter color because he wanted to make it appeal to kids. Guys, I want you to really just stop and understand who and what Tom Rothman actually is. He is bad for business, long term. Short term, he's great for stock owners and investors because the movies are going to make money. If some movies bomb, it's cool because other movies are going to do great, and boom, there you go. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually understand what the real fans like. He just doesn't, especially when it comes to the comic book stuff. He just doesn't. Hey, Marvel as a whole, Disney came along and they're like, listen, Ike Perlmutter, you don't understand what's actually good for business. Hey, listen, you go around, you start messing with the comic books and making them do this, that, and the other thing. And I know a bunch of comic gators want to try and tell you, oh, there's Ike Perlmutter is fixing things. Ike Perlmutter has befuddled so many aspects. Disney doesn't even want to call him a freaking vice president. They don't want to have him involved in a lot of this stuff, but his contract makes it so that's the case. They're trying to make him as uninvolved in the processes as possible of everything. They actually said, you can't be involved in the MCU movies anymore. Feige's going to be in charge of this stuff now. He's doing everything okay. We don't want another Iron Man 2. We sure as hell don't want another Iron Man 3. You just need to back off. We don't even need the Avengers Infinity War, not Infinity War, the Avengers Age of Ultron stuff that you came in with. No, just stay out of it, man. Go away. We're better off without you. His contract makes it so that he's stuck in there. Much like his good and best friend, Avi Arad. He's stuck in there. You can't get rid of this guy. He's like a freaking cyst. He's like a wart. Anyway, yeah, bad for business, but there's nothing they could do about it. There is something they could do about Ike Perlmutter, but they don't choose to. Okay, let's start reading some of the crazy stuff that, once again, Mike Fleming Jr. has written about Tom Rothman and what a great godsend that he is, apparently. Let's see this bias report. So this is probably the most telling paragraph. It's only a couple sentences long in this particular article. And I'm going to read it twice. One in a regular voice, and then in the voice that it was actually meant to be told in. It is understandable that the fiscally shrewd Rothman would balk at giving up half of Sony's biggest franchise to Marvel. After all, Marvel already owns the merchandising on Spider-Man. Does the mouse really need half of the movie universe also? Sony so far has decided that, as valuable as Feige is, Disney is asking too high a price. Now, let me read this thing again, but read it to you in the way that it should actually be read. It's understandable that the fiscally shrewd Rothman would balk at the idea of giving up half of Sony's biggest franchise to Marvel. After all, Marvel already owns the merchandising of Spider-Man. Does the mouse really need half of the movie universe also? Sony so far has decided that, as valuable as Feige is, Disney's just asking too high a price. I mean, wow. You're a fraudulent foe with the strength of Hercules, and the way you're on his dick must really hurt your knees. Some of you guys will remember Mr. Davalina. In the meantime, wow. Really? The fiscally shrewd Rothman? I guess that's a very fair way of looking at it, but first off, giving up half of Sony's biggest franchise to Marvel? So let me just try and get this straight. Marvel does all the work, but they're asking for half the costs to be paid. Even if they were all, and maybe they are, maybe they're not, it's not apparent by this article. Plus, it's also one-sided, probably only from Amy Pascal. Even if Marvel was asking for half of the profits also, let me get this straight. 50-50 cut is a bad thing? A 50-50 cut is a bad thing? This is such a smear job. It's ridiculous. This is such dishonest reporting. It's painful. This is about as one-sided gets. Why is Rothman being, you know what? I don't think you really get the picture just yet, unless you read this article. I don't think you understand just how much he's actually, Tom Rothman is actually being waxed here. Let's get into it. Sources said, I'm going to read the last two paragraphs, whatever. Sources said that Sony reasoned that they will be fine without Feige. The creative template that has been set on Spider-Man films and Watt and Holland are in place, along with Amy Pascal, who became producer with Feige after she exited the executive suite after presiding over the previous Spider-Man itinerations directed by Sam Raimi and Mark Webb as Spider-Man Sony Pictures chief. Translation: Amy Pascal, who was fired from her job but was able to eke out something better because she finally, after throwing a sandwich at freaking Kevin Feige. Yeah, that's right, that was in the leaks also. After she threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige for making a deal with her, and she said that's absolutely ridiculous, Sony would never do something like that. She wound up making that exact deal with Feige after the leaks came out, because she while she might not be a genius when it comes to making movies, she's a genius at keeping her job. While she couldn't keep her actual job, she got bumped down in a very honorable way that it didn't even look like it was actually a demotion. It was a demotion. You look at it. She had Tom Rothman now has her old job, and now she's been bumped down to working with Feige. Working with Feige. She doesn't work with Feige. She works for Feige while this deal is being made. She has zero executive privilege or power. None. She works for Feige, which is the most disrespectful thing in the world to be working for this guy who got his start working for her. Kevin Feige got his start working as an assistant for Amy Pascal. She threw a sandwich at him. Dude. So, of course, we've got to have a quick little job by this knucklehead Fleming to Amy Pascal. Anyway, so as sources note that Venom was a problem... what do you call it here? Yes. As sources note that Venom was a problem picture and far from the polished project that grossed $856 million worldwide until Rothman himself, Tom Rothman himself, it says here, spent a good long time in the editing room helping to get it there. Listen, as a former university English professor, I still teach English. I just don't do it at university anymore because I actually want to make money. Yeah, man. Spent a good long time. That is not the way that articles are written. My wife is the journal. Well, she went to journalism school. My wife is the former journalist, not me. But we're both English teachers. This quite clearly is someone kissing someone's ass. This is not actual, fair, unbiased reporting. This is, I want to polish your shoes, and I will use shoe polish. The question is, do you want me to use a rag and a brush, or just my tongue? That's exactly what's being done here. That's exactly what's being said here. Why? Why the immediate butt kissing of Tom Rothman? Well, because he's still got contacts with, and this part is just my opinion, because he's still got this contact with Amy Pascal, as we've seen, as has been established by the leaks. But now that Tom Rothman is in her old position, and she's not as powerful as she used to be, he kind of still wants that same level of exclusivity. And the only way to do it is to kiss that booty. Interesting. The things that we will do for exclusivity. Yeah, I know. If Fleming ever sees this video, I'm sure he would say something like, "You should just stick to reviewing comic books." Believe me, I would like to just stick to reviewing comic books and teaching English and all the little things that I do, being a good daddy and stuff. But I gotta call a spade when I see it, brother. I gotta call a spade a spade. This is pitiful. This is miserable. I actually feel a little bit bad for the guy. It finishes off with so literally just before I do finish off that paragraph, think about what's being said here. All the people who were involved in making this movie sucked. Tom Hardy sucked. The producers sucked. The writers sucked, the directors sucked, they all sucked, and there was nowhere near making almost $900 million. Till our savior, Tom Rothman, who was booted from 20th Century Fox for doing this, he went and took this unpolished stone, turned it into a diamond. That's exactly what's being done here. That's not an opinion. It's evident. This is just, you read it, you observe it, you report on it. That's all that this is. This is literally just him kissing ass, sucking whatever he's going to suck, tossing salads, whatever he can to maintain that exclusive title whenever he reports on something that has anything to do with Sony, because that is job security for him. Hey man, it's putting meat on his table. You know what I'm saying? You can hardly fault the guy. But when you look at the reporting, if you smell what this guy is brewing, I don't want to completely bite off the rock. So anyway, he says here, the Venom sequel is well underway, and with Andy Serkis directing Tom Hardy. Yeah, but it's going to suck until... what's his name, freaking Tom Rothman comes along and takes care of that unpolished product anyway. So who cares if Andy Serkis is directing it? But now all of a sudden Andy Serkis is directing it. And there's Morbius with Jared Leto, The movie that everybody was asking for. Because after that killer work that he did as the Joker, you son of a bitch. Kraven the Hunter, and another spin-off with characters Silver Sable and Black Cat. Yeah, the black and silver that everybody was making fun of, even internally in freaking Sony. I mean, come on, man. Nobody asked for that. Nobody wants it. Nobody's interested in that. Just come on. For crying out loud. So, and a Sinister Six film that got shelved. Got shelved because the damn franchise failed. That particular franchise under Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield, mind you, the guy who said, I think I would like to see a gay Peter Parker. Why not have a gay Spider-Man? Little boy, at the time he was a little boy. Hopefully he's grown up since then and he understands the idea of radically changing a character. Little boy, shut your damn mouth. You got booted, you're gone. Hopefully not to return. Please learn your lesson. Please learn your lesson. Yeah, this was... God, what a freaking debacle this is. The one movie that everybody was looking forward to, Sinister Six film, yes! And it bombed. So therefore, the Sinister Six film will not be made now. I guess we'll never have the gay Peter Parker either. Poor us. Anyway, which once felt the ticking clock of generating a Spider-Man film every 3 or so years to prevent a rights reversion to Disney, now has plenty of pictures to make. Yeah, just pointing this out, you still have the ticking time bomb of the rights reversion happening. You still have to make a Spider-Man film every 3 or so years, whatever the hell it is that he's trying to say here. Otherwise, it's going to revert back, and it's going to revert back to Disney. So, like, honestly, I don't know what he's trying to report here. All those things that happened before still apply today. They still feel like they once felt the ticking clock of generating a Spider-Man film to prevent the rights reversion, now has plenty of pictures to make. They still have to produce the same amount of films in the same amount of time. And they always had plenty of films to make. They always had. It wasn't because of the... I don't understand this. They were planning on doing the Spider-Man universe where the Sinister Six thing was going to be a part of the greater universe, and they were going to be making... Avi Arad never stopped saying, Venom will be great! So, actually, he goes, hey, Venom will be great, hey. That's what he always did with a Spider-Man hat on, because he likes to act like, screw this guy. Go back to Toy Biz, dude. Yeah, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. From before the picture deal, nothing has changed. They still have the same problem. They still have to hope that after this one movie that they do with, what do you call it? The director and with, what the heck is the director's name again? It's right here on IMDb. John Watts. And with Tom Holland. They've got one movie that they're locked into to make for them. But after that, are they going to stay? Maybe. But I think that history has shown that Tom Rothman, even though he said, I've learned from my mistakes, I realized that I was the problem, he still continues to do the same thing, and it's being reported on currently that he still does the same thing. You know, they sit there and they said at one point, Tom Rothman, oh my God, this is the guy who made sure that Avatar happened and Titanic happened. That happened because of his partner, Jim Giannopoulos, who was his co-chair. He didn't have as much power as Rothman, but almost as much power as Rothman had under 20th Century Fox. He was a strong proponent for both of those movies. He's the one who got Titanic made. He got it pushed forward, not with Rothman, but in spite of Rothman. Not in spite of him necessarily. I don't know what their relationship is. So maybe not in spite of, but definitely despite him. He got Titanic made. Rothman is on the record saying he does not believe that Titanic will ever make any kind of money. He's not interested. He was never interested. But he was real quick to take that credit afterwards, isn't he? if you have any questions about James Cameron's Avatar, you know it was done in space, right? Tom Rothman didn't want that made, and he's on the record. He also didn't want to get that movie made. It was actually done by Giannopoulos. He pushed it forward, and that was despite all the best efforts of Tom Rothman. Like when you hold your pull and then you say, listen, I never asked for anything, but I'm demanding, I'm putting my foot down that I want this made. It's like, well, I outrank you just a bit, but all right, if that's what you want to do, but you're going on the record that you're the one who wanted this done. And then after it's done, I fully supported this. This is the guy who wouldn't let, and Ryan Reynolds and Rob Liefeld, everybody who was involved in the Deadpool movie, the guy who looks like Daredevil, that was involved in the Deadpool movie, all of them said, Tom Rothman is the one who's blocking this being made. Guys, that script was revealed long before the movie was actually put out. Long before. 5 years. But actually, it wasn't 5 years. Whatever. It was being held at gunpoint for 5 years. But for at least a year, maybe a year and a half to 2 years, that script was leaked on purpose to get the fans to generate some interest and be like, oh my God, this would be amazing. And it's proof it was, but it couldn't be made until after Rothman was gone. Guys, Rothman is a terrible thing for Sony. And that's the thing, though. The shareholders are the ones who hire a CEO, not the people. It's the shareholders. And what did I say about the shareholders? He's never turned in a quarterly loss, which means yearly loss. He's never turned in a loss as long as he's been in charge. That's all that shareholders care about. All they care about. And of course, while that's the case, he will micromanage films. He will get them made as inexpensively as possible. And in the deadline he wants, so that he will always get his bonuses. He's not in it for us. He's not a fan. He doesn't understand us. He doesn't get it. Anything Spider-Man related is going to flop. He doesn't even like comic book movies. He's on the record actually saying as much. He doesn't like he canceled Firefly for crying out loud. He doesn't like sci-fi. He doesn't like space, but he'll say he's a fan. But dude, I could say that I like milk and throw up every time I take a sip or even come near it. I mean, for crying out loud, anybody can lie. The proof is always in the pudding. Just ask Bill Cosby. Oh, I went there. Guys, this ain't gonna work. I'm gonna go on the record with my little prediction here. Disney and Sony will probably work something out. But you got to understand the most important part of everything that was said here, despite the crappy reporting and the redaction that was put out just a couple of hours later to Fleming's report by Fleming, where he right away says, mind you, what does it say at the end of this? At the end of the article, he says, no comment from Marvel, Disney, or Feige, or Sony Pictures. But then, and he had the exclusive to this. He had the exclusive. But then when he does the update at 5 minutes before midnight Eastern Standard Time, he says, Sony Pictures spent much of yesterday trying to spin Deadline about the prospective loss of Kevin Feige from future Spider-Man films. You're so stupid. You're so pitifully, miserably stupid that you actually just revealed your hand. What we already knew, what I already knew just by looking at it and by looking at everything, you just revealed your hand that it was Sony who leaked it. Probably Pascal, possibly some of Rothman, but at the end of the day, figureheads from Sony put the spin. A spin! Understand, this is a reporter who knows better than all of us what a spin is, and he's saying they put the spin on it. And by the end of the update, this huge 2-paragraph update, he still winds up turning around saying, oh, but they're Sony's the good guys. But look at what he does. The beginning of the article and the end of the article are always different. Fair and neutral, unbiased. No, totally. Disney's the bad guys, but Feige, you should go over and work for Sony because, they're very good, especially Rothman, and I still like Amy Pascal too. Come on, man. It is clear and evident to anybody with eyes and ears. like that's all you're doing is trying to you're the one sitting here putting the spin. You're taking the spin and you're regurgitating the spin. That's all that this guy is doing. He's revealed his hand. It's plain as day for anybody to see. It's miserable. It's pitiful. It's embarrassing. The fact of the matter here, a guy who doesn't have any insider information, who just simply looks at this objectionably, let's be realistic of what's really going to happen here. Sony is going to go on their own for a little while. They've got one movie with the director, with several of the writers, and with Tom Holland. And they're going to put together a movie that's also going to feature Venom, Tom Hardy as Venom. And they're going to do everything they possibly can, I would imagine, to make it as good a movie as possible. Why? Well, one, they want to make the money. Will Tom Rothman take a risk? Maybe he could look at it as the money that I'm putting into this is because of all the money that Disney made us from, the deal that we previously had with them. But they're going to do the best they can. Why? Because that's going to be how they're going to try and do a sweetheart deal. Disney tried to do a sweetheart deal with Sony and said, here's all this beautiful free stuff. Look, free, like a drug dealer. Just like a drug dealer. The first bump is free. The first hit is free. After that, you're paying for it. All right? There's an NWA song there somewhere. If your girl kneel down and suck, you know what I'm saying? But the idea is they did a sweetheart deal, miniature, so they go into a longer term deal at more fair, just like, look at how much money we can make you. Now, let's split the cost and go in this 50-50. Let's be perfectly fair. People who are in love with Sony and want to blame Marvel for stuff, oh yeah, sure. Like, they're going to sit there and say, oh, Marvel, you're screwing things up. Because all they want is a good Spider-Man movie, and they don't care if Marvel's losing. You're making enough money. Sure, you're also the guys who go around downloading comic books for free and then telling people, oh, this comic book sucked, man. Shut up. Just stop. Try and look at this fairly. Okay? Try and seriously look at this with as clean eyes as possible. Disney did a great sweetheart deal for a limited time to show Sony how profitable this deal could be by giving them way too good of a deal. Sony wants to try and imagine that this one card that they have, Spider-Man, is the one thing that's going to make it like, oh, we got Marvel by the cojones, man. Maybe. But I don't think so. It's going to break a lot of people's hearts, but I think that we'll be okay, personally. Most of the people are giving the backlash towards Sony, hoping that's, and everybody hoping that Sony's going to just be the one to say, fine, let's make this fair deal. Feige went in with a fair deal to Amy Pascal, got a sandwich thrown at him, had a hack against her, and suddenly said, I'll take that deal, and then acted like, it was a good deal. We decided it was a fair deal, and blah, blah, blah. Shut up. Just shut up. Everybody can see a liar when we see one. And now Sony's just doing the same thing under Rothman. Oh, you gave us a great deal. But they're not going to take it. I just don't, and maybe they will, but I don't think they will. Why would they? When they still got everybody crucial to the film right there. They've got one chance at one movie to make a great Venom and Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, crossover. And if they put everything they got into it to make it succeed, then maybe they can trick the director, the writers, the actors into actually staying on with them. And if they get them in another contract, all of a sudden, oh no, now we got you by the balls. Now we can start going back to the regular Tom Rothman stuff. There's any number of ways this could go, my peeps. Any number of ways it can go. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to people just trying to do what's in their own best interests. That includes Disney. But I got to be honest, from everything that I'm seeing here, saying, let's split everything down the middle, Sony looks like the spouse, husband, wife, whatever, who's saying, no, how about I get everything and you get Jack? That's what I'm seeing here. And that's even by the reporting done by this spinster Fleming, who's just trying to maintain his his role getting exclusivity. Yeah, this whole thing is just a mess. I expect that Sony is going to stay and they're going to make their movie. Afterwards, depending on how successful that movie is, that's how we'll see what goes on from that point forward. Because no, even with the advent of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you got to remember, most people don't look at videos like this. They don't look into the articles and try and get as informed as me or many of the other people out there who are finding out this information. They just don't get into it like that. They just want to see a good movie. So a lot of people thinking, a lot of people went into the movie for Into the Spider-Verse thinking, oh, this is going to be a part of the MCU. And no, it wasn't actually. That was the movie that they made to try and maintain their rights. Think about that. They still had to maintain their rights because as part of the contract, it was exposed that when Marvel is making those movies, when Disney's making those Spider-Man movies, that doesn't count towards Sony's contractual, you have to make a movie every 3 years or so. That's what Into the Spider-Verse was. Funny how that works, right? Yeah. Sony still has all the problems that they've had before, including not knowing what the hell they're doing and being more concerned with shareholders than the actual fans, which is great short term, terrible long term. It's just like when you look at the economy. Hey man, we'll have a couple of really great years for stockholders, and we'll say that stockholders is having a good economy. Meanwhile, people don't have good jobs, and every 8 to 10 years or so, we're going to go into some kind of a recession. And it's going to be really bad for all of the little people. The stockholders will still be okay, though, because they saw it. They pulled out. Listen, guys, this is just a political game. This all that this is. Sony's going to make their movie. And depending on the success of that movie, that's what's going to determine if they go running back to Marvel or not, running back to Disney or not. But at some point, look, everything has reverted back to Marvel except Spider-Man. And we were positive. 10 years ago, we were positive. We were never going to see a good X-Men movie made. We were never going to see, Wolverine crossing over with Captain America and Iron Man and stuff like that. And then look what happened. Fantastic Four back. We got Daredevil back from, a completely different mindset. Ghost Rider, no more Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider stuff. Guys, I'm pretty sure eventually that's what's going to happen. We'll be good. We good. All right, guys, that's it for me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.